What are the consequences of giving your loved ones your leftover energy? And what situation comes to mind when your instincts were actually completely wrong? Hi, I'm Becky Burley, co-founder of What Drives Winning with Brett Ledbetter. On this episode of What Drives Winning Conversations, we explore those questions and more with our thinking partner, Bill Beswick. Brett and Bill have a very special relationship that's been developed over the years, and that will come through as Brett asks Bill a few random questions from his new book, 365 Questions to Get to Know Yourself and Your Team Better. Let's jump in.
Bill, give me a number between 1 and 365.
68.
All right, here we go. When's the last time you said to yourself, I'm not okay? What made you say that? What can you learn from that?
That's a good question. I think I'd been dealing with a client, and it was a man who'd lost his wife, an older man who'd lost his wife, and he wanted some guidance on managing himself, on how to come through this traumatic situation. And I think at the end of it, I suddenly thought, somebody should be doing this with you, Bill. Somebody should be talking to you like this. Somebody should be asking you things. And I thought, I'm not okay. I'm too isolated. I'm too much giving help to other people and not getting any help for myself. I'm not getting anybody to reframe my reference points, reframe my story to give me some perspective for the future. So I think it's a very good question, because from our earliest time, we're taught to think we're okay. And we create an illusion that life is good, that we're fine, and we don't question it. And then you get older and you think back and say, I wish I'd questioned that. I wish I'd changed that. So saying to yourself occasionally, I'm not okay. I need to reflect and reframe my life. I need to think again about what I'm doing with my life. I mean, that's why I wrote the book, Changing Your Story. Everybody writes the script of their own life. Everybody. But sometimes we do it on automatic. We don't think about it. We just let life take over. Life dictates to us rather than us dictating to life. So Changing Your Story was meant to say to people, say to yourself, I'm not okay, and then do something about it. Reframe your life.
When you think about that question recently, what do you need to reframe at times? What's the most common thing?
I think the most common thing is your view of your relationships with other people. You need to work on those relationships. You need to think about them. They grow and develop, and sometimes you get left behind. At 79, I worry I'm past my sell-by date. But unfortunately, my work is about core principles of human behavior. And the stories may be out of date, but the principles are fine. So I think assuming your relationships are fine and you find out you're not putting any work into them. You know, when I was coaching England and traveling the world, I always thought my wife would be fine. I wasn't doing any work to make sure that was the case. And that was a mistake.
Hey, there's a line I heard the other day, forgotten, but not yet gone.
Yes, it's the last chance saloon with relationships. You've forgotten to say thank you. You've forgotten to work. You've forgotten to say, how are you? They're not gone. They're around. They're hanging on to give you the opportunity to do that. But you're not seizing that moment. And eventually one day they will be gone.
And Bill, if we look at it from the context of the person, like first person, like I feel like I'm forgotten about, but I'm not yet gone.
I'm very fortunate in my family in the sense that I'm not forgotten. I'm very much taken care of. I'm very grateful for being, I mean, I'm 79. It would be quite appropriate for you to have forgotten about me and moved on. But you've not. And so I'm very grateful for that. I'm very grateful to be part of other people's lives and to be considered helpful. And so I think it's very important to work to not be forgotten, to contribute, to ask yourself, how do I help other people? I mean, I think I said to my younger son the other day that there's two kinds of eulogies when you die. There's the one that quotes your career performance. He did this, he did that, he owned this, he made money on this, and he did that. And there's the one that says he was a good person. He was a nice dad. He loved his grandchildren. I would rather like that one. And I said to Philip, when you talk about me, talk about that one. Talk about how I help people. That's all I need to say about my career. I help people. That'll do me.
Well, where you help me the most is just being able to have such a clear perspective looking back on what matters most. And I guess that's the question I would have before we transition into the next question is when did you start to learn about the two eulogies? How old were you? And then how long did it take once you were aware, I want to be different, to actually be different?
I think everything came from me from coaching. I think coaching is a fantastic experience for reframing yourself and thinking about and developing as an individual. And in coaching, you have to go to the big picture. You have to put a team together that can operate in any condition. I was coaching England all over the world for 5 years, and I had to prepare them for every context. So I became a big picture coach. I wasn't great on the detail. I didn't worry about the detail, to be honest with you, but I got the big picture right in terms of team development, human behavior, response to different contexts. So I think that transferred into my life, and I began to think about my life in bigger terms than just what am I going to eat, what am I going to have for dinner. And so that's been.
Hey, Bill, can I say something to that real quick? Because what I heard the other day was something beautiful. And I think sometimes really good coaches, as you know, can manage this well in certain contexts. But if you put them in a different context, they don't manage as well. And it was when people get really connected to you, that they are at the mercy of your internal state. And so you can put on a great face for your team, develop them, but then maybe when you go home, those people are also very connected to your internal state. How do you think about that quote?
That's a very good quote, because that's where I cause most damage, because I was fantastic in my performer self because it gave me energy. I was with my clients. I loved it, and on the basketball court coaching or in sports psychology consulting. But when I came home, I needed to break away. I needed to get back to my real self. And my real self was exhausted from the effort with my clients. And so I would not give enough energy to my family and my wife and my family. And they paid a price for me.
Why do you think that is?
I once attended university for a psychology master's with a very outstanding lecturer called David Hargreaves. And he's a social psychologist. And he said, any individual can only cope with 7 or 8 human interactions in a day. If you're going to make those human interactions meaningful and pay attentive, give somebody attentive focus, listen carefully and respond, you can only do 7 or 8 in the day. And then he said, and you better save one of those for when you get home. I never saved one for when I was home. And that was my tragic flaw.
Well, that's why you help so many people with that. What are the consequences of giving your loved ones leftover energy?
They become your ex-loved ones, because they have to get something out of life themselves. They're writing the script of their own story, and they're putting that script on hold to look after you. And they can only do that for so long. I take fantastic pride now in being at the back of the room when my family gathers. They sit me in a corner with a drink, and my family, they take over. And I'm very proud of that. I'm no longer at the front of the room, I'm at the back of the room. But I can see things that make me very proud.
Bill, give me another number.
181.
When was the most significant time in your life when you said to yourself, this doesn't feel right?
That's a very difficult question for me to answer, because I've had a very fortunate career in the sense that I've had a number of jobs, a number of situations, and I've been happy in virtually everything I've done. There was one occasion when I was a sports, I had 2 careers. I had the career that earned me the money to give my family financial security, and then the career coaching basketball, which was amateur in those days, and that was my interest. So in my formal career, I was a teacher, then a lecturer at university, and then I became president of the university. And it was when I became president of the university, I realized I was doing it for the money and not for love. My
How
main
long did
love,
it take you to learn that?
well, I think reasonably quickly, because I realized that my value to other people is me as a teacher. In the teaching role, I'm valuable to other people. As an administrator, I'm just like anybody else. But I made the conscious decision to do 3 years as president because that would give me my family financial security, and so I did that. But it was probably the job that gave me the least pleasure, the least kick. So I did it well. I worked hard, but I was doing it for a reason that wasn't really my reason.
It's so fascinating because I'm going to ask you to look at this question in a different way. I want you to think about some of the complexities, the nuances that you've worked within, and you can walk into a room and you're like, this doesn't feel right. Okay. What percent of the time do you think when that happened, your instincts were accurate?
Very high percentage. I'm a great believer in instinct. I think instinct is a word that encompasses a lifetime of experience. And if you're sensitive to environments, I work with a guy called Steve Harrison, fantastic guy. And we talked a lot on away trips in the bus. We would travel on the bus together and he would talk a lot to me. And he would tell me he could go into a sports environment and sniff. And he knew within 5 minutes whether it was a good environment or a poor environment. And he'd look, he said, just the ambience, people talking, eye contact, people busy with things to do, smiles, laughter, activity. This is a good place.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that, Bill, because there's a really high level coach. And one of the things that he said, the hardest thing about my job that I'm learning is when to react and when not to.
Yeah, I think there's a great skill in coaching, not reacting. And I remember as a teacher in high school, in a tough Manchester school with all boys school, that you could react to everything. You could pile the work on for yourself and you could make it a tough job, or you learn what to ignore, what not to see, what not to hear. I think I remember a story you told me about a football team going out in the field, and as they were out in the field, the announcer said that Donald Trump was on the field ready to receive them. And one of the players shouted out, "Fuck Donald Trump." Now, as a coach, I might have chosen, that was right before a national final. I might have chosen not to hear that. I might have chosen to, what did he say? I didn't know.
It's beautiful because there are so many coaches that are a slave to their impulse. And when things aren't right, they just can't deal with it. And then they end up projecting their anxiety onto the situation and making it worse. How do you think about that?
I think the coach the health of the team is a reflection of the face of the coach. The health of the team is a reflection of the face of the coach. It's a very important phrase in coaching. When you're coaching, you go on stage because the team is looking for you. These young people are looking for you to say, is everything okay? Should we be confident? Should we be anxious? You're a key barometer in their mood, their feelings. And so I've often been in situations coaching where I've not known what the hell I was doing, but the players have never known that because I've been confident, smiling. This will do. This is great, boys. I've had energy. And I've come away at the end of the game thinking, what was I doing?
Bill, one of the things that I've struggled with the most as I think about the concept of performer self and real self is you want to maintain pure authenticity, if possible, but there's a performative nature that disrupts that authenticity.
I think authenticity is very important. I think but you have to learn the tricks of your trade. It's a craft coaching. It's a craft like woodworking or plumbing. It's a craft. You have to learn the tricks of your trade. And some of these you have to incorporate in your behavior. So most of your behavior you hope is authentic, but some of it is shaped by different factors, and you have to go with those because in the end, you're dictated to by what works as a coach, what gets your team over the line. I mean, I've done 60 years in this business, and I've never once thought anything other than my job is to help coaches win. I've never put winning. A lot of people go into sports psychology and they get into philosophy, they get into human performance. But I've always believed that the application of psychology is to help coaches win.
What he's saying is so real, but it's laced with wisdom. And young people, it's so hard to accelerate their cognitive capacity to understand what's going on with that. And it makes me think of an incredible video that was shown to me this week. This is Bill Gates describing to David Letterman what the internet is before anyone really knew what the internet was. And I feel like this is someone that can see into the future, like a Bill, and he's telling a younger him or a younger us, here's what's going to happen. And we're like, David Letterman in this clip.
And what about this internet thing? Do you know anything about that?
Sure.
What the hell is that exactly?
Well, it's become a place where people are publishing information.
Right.
So everybody can have their own homepage. Companies are there, the latest information. It's wild what's going on. You can send electronic mail to people. It is the big new thing.
Yeah, but it's easy to criticize something you don't fully understand, which is my position here.
Go ahead.
But I can remember a couple of months ago, there was like a big breakthrough announcement that on the internet or on some computer deal, they were going to broadcast a baseball game. You could listen to a baseball game on your computer. And I just thought to myself, does radio ring a bell? You know what I mean?
There's a difference.
There is a difference.
It's not a huge difference.
What is the difference?
But you can listen to the baseball game whenever you want.
All right.
Too.
Oh, I see. So it's stored in one of your memory deals,
Exactly.
and then you can come
That's
back
the
a year
RAM
later.
thing you talked about earlier.
Yeah. Do tape recorders ring a bell?
He's seeing things so clearly, and he's trying to articulate to someone. It's like asking someone to talk to a blind person that has never seen and describe the color green. Think about how you would do that. That's exactly what Bill Gates is trying to do for David Letterman. And that's oftentimes what the wise tries to do for the youth.
I'm just thinking how to describe the color green. That's a hell of a question. That's why the great coaches are the bravest coaches. They don't follow established patterns. They look at a situation, they look at a context, and they come up with their own solution, and they then do it. And they've got the courage to do it in action rather than stick to the established line. So when Guardiola started coaching soccer in this country, he changed our perception of the way soccer should be played. We played at 90 miles an hour. The ball changed possession between the two teams again and again and again. He suddenly said, we play at 10 miles an hour, we keep possession, and then we play at 90 miles an hour when it's right. And that, I saw that early on. I thought, this is fantastic. He had the courage to do that, to introduce his philosophy in a fairly hostile environment. And he's been now so successful.
Hey, when you do that, you're basically a minority of one.
Yes.
Because you can see what the norm can't.
Well, it does. I mean, coaches are courageous people. You wouldn't be a coach unless you were a courageous person, because when you're coaching, you step over the line. I've told this story before. My father, I was the youngest of 6 boys and the one that went to grammar school and on to university. My father was a very simple, basic man. And I don't remember many conversations with him, but we had one conversation where he said, I was about 16, he said, Billy, there's a line, I put a line on the floor. Me and your brothers have all stayed this side of the line. Somebody's told us what to do. We've worked for other people. Somebody's told us whether we've got overtime, whether we can have meat this weekend, whatever. I want you to step over the line. I want you to be the one in the family that steps over the line. Take responsibility. You determine what happens, not let somebody determine it for you. And that had a powerful effect on me, and I've stepped over the line ever
How could it
since.
not?
Well, it's true. I mean, it's about the only conversation I remember with it. He was a very, very quiet man. He was deaf, and he was a very quiet man. But when you learn to step over the line, you build up a reservoir of courage, because most times I've stepped over the line, I've been proved right. I've taken responsibility. I've stepped and it means I've never turned down a challenge, a job. I've always stepped up. When they asked me to commentate on national television, 2 hours notice. Okay. It's not always work, but I think I've always thought life is 8 out of 10. You can't be perfect. You can't get 10 out of 10 in life. It's too challenging, too difficult, too complex. 8 out of 10 is bloody good. I'll take out of 10. But to be courageous, you've got to learn to live with the 2. The secret of life is learning to live with the 2 that go wrong, and keeping perspective of those, not getting sucked into the 2 that's wrong, but rather thinking, I got 8 right. That's pretty good, Bill. Well done, boy.
All right, Bill, give me one last question, number real quick. And then as you do that, what is it?
365.
365. You know yourself better than anyone. What would be your biggest hesitation in following you as a leader?
I think detail. I'm not good on detail. I'm good on big picture issues. I'm good on feeling issues. I'm good on emotional issues. I'm highly empathetic. I can get the mood and morale of a team very good. I can engineer that beautifully. But I'm not good on detail. I don't have much stamina, and I won't go through. My wife is a scientist. She'll go into the detail of things, and she'll get the detail right. So when we do a project together, she will do the detail absolutely perfectly. So I think if I was leading for example, my wife says, I wouldn't let you pack my backpack for a parachute jump. She's right. You divide people into 2. Those people you'd let pack your parachute, and those people you wouldn't. And you wouldn't let
You would be the person helping the person jump. This is going to be an exhilarating thrill.
Correct. I'd be encouraging them to jump. You'll enjoy this. You're really good. My wife would say, you're safe with this parachute.
The last question I'll have on that one is, you see a lot of coaches that are insecure, particularly on the male side, when there are people that gain influence within the environment. And so if you're a big picture thinker and you have some with unbelievable technical detail, and you have a very motivated group of people learning that technical information, that person can gain so much social equity within that environment. How are you able to be comfortable with that? And what are signs that you see of an insecure coach who would not be comfortable with that?
Insecurity is part of coaching. It's part of crossing the white line, stepping over the line. When you accept the challenge of high performance, insecurity is part of that, because you can't predict the result. There are other people out there doing just as much work as you. You could prepare for 4 years for an Olympic race. You don't know how the other competitors are preparing. And so you can be so insecure, like Daley Thompson, one of our most famous athletes, who trained twice on Christmas Day because he thought his competitors wouldn't be. You can drive you crazy. So I think insecurity is part of the game. What you've got to learn to do is to put that on the shelf and say, I understand that that's an issue, but I can only deal with what I've got in front of me. So you learn to break down big complex issues into understandable today's issue. What can I do now? What can I do tomorrow? What can I do the day after? So you break insecurity down by saying to yourself, I've done everything I can. I used to say to my football coaches, soccer coaches, when we go out on the field for a big game, I'd say to them, when the players left to go on the field, have you done everything this week to prepare these players to get the best possible result today? And they'd think about it and say, yes. I said, well, relax now. Come and sit with me. We'll watch them play. It's their game.
This is Bill at his finest, Becky, because what we're learning and what's often lost when you're inside a competition is the other team is feeling all the same things.
Correct.
They're feeling the holes of their roster. They're feeling the imperfections. It's really how you manage that. And what Bill is doing with that script is anchoring them into the present, getting their feet on the ground so they can focus on executing the task. It's not an intervention, it's execution.
What's your biggest takeaway from that conversation? When I asked the class that question after they listened to Brett and Bill live, their biggest takeaway was when Bill said, "I've always thought 8 out of 10 is a great life. The key to life is learning how to live with the 2. Makes you reflect. What do you need to learn to live with?" We always want to leave you with a few questions to think about. These questions, as well as a link to download the listening guide, can be found in the description of this episode. In case you're active while you're listening currently, I'll read them out loud for you, and feel free to press pause after each one to give yourself time to think about each answer. Question 1. Are you good or bad at asking for help? Why? And what in your life reinforced that the most? Question 2. Bill said, the health of the team is reflected on the face of the coach. When is the last time you had an unhealthy face with your team? Why? Question 3. An important aspect of coaching is understanding when to react versus when not to. When have you not reacted but wish you would have? And when have you reacted and wish you wouldn't have? Question 4. For you personally, what are the consequences of giving your loved ones leftover energy? Question 5, when have you shrunk to be accepted instead of risking failure to be bold? Thanks again for listening. And for more information on What Drives Winning and the courses Brett and I teach, visit whatdriveswinning.com. We'll see you next time.